faster than a speeding typewriter, more powerful than a printing press, able to speak over tall buildings in a single sound. Look, up on the dial!
It's a conservative!
It's a liberal! It's Supermouth! Yes, it's Supermouth, strange visitor from the past with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal talk show hosts. Supermouth, who can change the course of local politics, bend ears with his bare mouth, and who, disguised as Mike Wiley, mild-mannered reporter for a great metropolitan radio show, fights a never-ending battle for truth, justice, and the American way.
Good morning, and welcome to another adventure of investigative podcast radio. God, I've been working a lot on these numbers. So here's the situation. Hopefully you've been following the show. If you haven't, you can go back to Rumble and on YouTube. The shows are there. Upon further review on YouTube and on Rumble, or the Wiley Information Network on Rumble to find the shows. So let me get you caught up to what's going on. As you may not recall from the last show we did, the Confederate Progressive Democrat Plantation history. Now, basically, I've broken the history of the United States and the attack by the Democrats on the United States. Okay, yeah, I know. Oh, Russia's our enemy and China's our friend. Bullshit. The only thing we get good from China is chicken lo mein and pork lo mein and fried rice. Okay, the pandemic was not the pandemic didn't come from Russia. Okay, and the pandemic cost us a lot of money. So the title of this show is "In Search of the 10 Trillion."
This series presents information based in part on theory and conjecture. The producer's purpose is to suggest some possible explanations, but not necessarily the only ones, to the mysteries we will examine.
Okay, $10 trillion has been stolen from us right in front of our eyes, okay, and no one's talking about it because, number one, they can't talk about it because the media tells them not to talk about it. The media is run and owned by the same people that run and own the Democratic Party, and that's the Communist Chinese Party. So, first plantation was 1776 to 1865. We can't start it any earlier because the United States wasn't involved then. So, this 400, 1600 crude crap. Second plantation, 1865 to 1912. The second plantation took place 5 days after the Democrat Confederates had surrendered at Appomattox Courthouse. And then 5 days later, they assassinated Abraham Lincoln, which then put a Democrat vice president into power. And that basically helped get rid of a lot of stuff that Lincoln wanted to see happen in favor of the black slaves and our freedmen. And then you've got the third section, or the third plantation, is from 1913 to 2024. This is the last year of the third plantation. There ain't no plantations anymore after this. 1913, we had a guy named Woodrow Wilson. He was a Democrat, progressive Democrat. He was also a Southerner. And he decided to shove taxes up our ass for the rest of our lives. It's illegal. We know it's illegal. It's against the Constitution. But since when does somebody in our government, specifically Democrats or real Republicans, let us know about this stuff? They don't. They don't at all. So we've been putting up with this shit for a long time. The time has come for it to end, okay? Yeah, there's 30 million Americans. They always talk about 10. Oh, there's 5 million Korean soldiers. Yeah, there's 100 million of us. 30 million of us are armed and ready to freaking go at it, okay? And if you guys start giving Trump any more shit, especially in these last 4 years where we're going to fix everything you guys put us through with Biden and Obama and Clinton, the past 30 years of this crap we've gone through, the cost, well, $10 trillion is missing, guys. 10 trillion.
Mike, how do you know 10 trillion's missing?
Now you got to remember, I used to do a radio show. So all these voices I used to do, no one saw who else was in the studio with me because it was radio, it wasn't TV. So you get the benefit of seeing how insane I am. However, I am quite a financial wizard. Not to the tunes of Wall Street and investments and all that other shit. But when it comes to business and finances and money and where your money's going and where it shouldn't be going, that's when you call me in, the wizard. Yes, I've been referred to as the wizard from time to time. Okay, I'm a financial guru. I'm now retired after some 40 years from corporate life, Xerox life, small business, and now I'm doing this because I like doing this. I know how to do it. I used to be in radio, except for this one blonde woman who lived in the White House didn't like me much. Of course, she hates America and she hates Jews. Don't you, Hillary? So I'm going to try to make this short and sweet. I've already been talking for 5 minutes. I'm going to try to keep this to a half an hour, okay? Because this is very important. And I need to cut these shows down because if they get too long, and I know you guys get bored, but you need to understand something. $10 trillion has been stolen from us. Where the hell is it? I'm going to show you where it is or where it may be, okay? But you have to understand, we have Hakeem Jeffries, the visionary, absolute magician of intelligence. He can make thoughts disappear, is now in charge of the left-wing lunatic scrum party. And we're going to have to deal with him for a while until all of them get put away. They've stolen $10 trillion. The name of the show is In Search of the 10 Trillion. That's why we use the In Search of music to start off with. Because always I like to have a theme about what we're doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present to you financial information. You're going to see it up on the screen, so you won't be seeing me when I'm presenting the information, but you'll be seeing the video, the graphic that I'm going to show you. But first, let me give you a, for instance, of Democrat financial crime. All right, first of all, you may have heard of this thing called the Inflation Reduction Act, okay? Because Obamacare is a scam. Remember, all Democrats have to do is they come up with their own scam. And what's the purpose of their scam, Mike? Let's see. Yeah, you in the back row. What? Yes, that person's correct. Where did the $2 billion come from for Kamala's campaign? $2 billion. Yeah, the most in history. Where'd that money come from?
It came from donors, Mike.
And how'd the donors get the money? Huh? 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 That's the crime. Money's being stolen from us, giving it to the donors, and in benefit of the Chinese. Okay, so we have this Inflation Reduction Act. Now, first of all, let me just say one thing. I am more than just talk. All right. I have filed my 2022 taxes correctly. Now, they don't think I have filed them correctly. They think I have come up with some fraudulent program or something, and they're saying that my return was frivolous.
It's frivolous, Mike. You can't do that.
Well, we're going to find out in a court of law, aren't we? Okay? And here's what we're going to do. We're going to put one of you assholes on the stand, and we're going to show you documentation from some organization you may have heard of called the IRS. And we're going to ask you, okay, the IRS says that inflation for 2022 was $8,417. $8,417 was the cost of inflation. And inflation is a tax legally considered a tax. Why? Because the inflation is created by Congress, and Congress is the only people who can legally come up with a tax or legally come up with spending. Either way, it's coming out of our pockets, and therefore that makes it a deduction, whether you include it right or not. Well, good news. The IRS does include inflation in their tax code. And what they do is they calculate what inflation is, and then they add it to the standard deduction. So the standard deduction for 2022 was increased by inflation, or $8,417. Right? Didn't you notice that $8,000 increase in the standard deduction? You didn't? Why? It was there if you had it calculated. Just because they don't tell you what they're doing doesn't mean they're hiding shit from us. They hide stuff from us all the time. And the other part of what I'm going after them for has to do with the first-time home buyer's tax credit. And I'm going to put one of those assholes on the stand in front of a jury, and I'm going to show him the form, and I'm going to ask him to explain why the tax credit on 2008 and the tax credit on 2009 aren't the same thing. It's the same words, but one is not a tax credit. It's a loan for your house. But you don't have to fill out any paperwork. There's no lien placed on your property. There's no mortgage placed on it. And the other one's a credit, and you don't have to pay that back. And if you bought your house when Governor Lord Obama was president, the Kenyan president who came to visit the United States and decided to stay, you didn't have to pay it back. But if you got it when George Bush, the Texan, was president, you have to pay that back. Why? Please explain to us the difference. So that's my battle with the IRS that's going on currently right now. They're busy reworking and looking at stuff because they don't have an answer for me. I'm going to enjoy this.
Oh, but Mike, they're going to come after you.
Yeah, let them. I've been waiting for this battle. I've been waiting since 2008. Actually, 2010. Because even though the tax form was 2008 and the credit was taken in 2008, I didn't actually know that I had to start paying it back until 2010. And then I went, what the hell is this? The word scam just came right out of the closet. So, you may have noticed that the standard deduction was only increased for inflation by $400.
$400? That doesn't make sense.
If the IRS is telling you that inflation's $8,417, why are they only giving you a $400 increase in the standard deduction for inflation? What calculation is that? Huh? Why don't you call up the IRS and ask them? Because you know what? They're either going to settle with me or they're going to go to court. And if they go to court and the jury rules that they've screwed the American people, how much money are the Democrats going to have to steal and take out of their homes and out of their secret pocket money they've been setting aside for years, waiting to screw us? So that's a shove it up your ass act by the IRS and your friendly neighborhood Democratic criminals. So here, let me just read this. The Inflation Reduction Act. On August 16, 2022, President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law. Now, the Democrats always name these acts based on something that they're not, but you're supposed to think they are. Like the first-time home buyer's tax credit really wasn't a tax credit, it was a loan. But they didn't want to use the term loan. In 2010, when they came up with the health care plan for Obama's health care plan, the Affordable Care Act, well, it wasn't affordable. It wasn't affordable at all. It cost people average $5,000 more a year. Why would they call it affordable? Were they just lying to us? Are they stupid? If there was no intent to lie to us, they're stupid. But if there was intent to lie to us, then they're criminals. So, the Inflation Reduction Act, making it one of the largest investments in the American economy, energy security. They don't let us drill for oil, but they're shipping oil to somebody, and climate that Congress has made in the nation's history. Congress, yeah. Who was in the Congress? Oh, let's see, 2022 were Democrats, and then they got elected out of power in 2022, and we got Republicans back in. Okay, so the Inflation Reduction Act is bullshit. Well, let's see, what do we got here? Oh, this is budget highlights. For the year 2022, okay, there's changes to the base, there's current services, program increases. Oh, the Department of the Treasury. Treasury. Wouldn't that be like where they keep track of all the money and stuff? Yeah. Well, they've increased it by 109 employees. 86 of them are departmental office staffing. They're building up offices. Wow. Interesting. Okay. What's that for? Let's see. The full year 2023 budget for Treasury Department officials. These investments will enable Treasury. These investments, see, they're investments. When they steal money from our pocket and put it into the government, that's an investment. We're making an involuntary investment, thanks to Democrats. These investments will enable Treasury to build on recent successes in fostering a robust and equitable economic recovery. What? Through the implementation of pandemic relief programs? You mean the fake pandemic that cost us trillions, as you're going to see? You gotta give the communist Chinese and their infidels, the Democrats, you gotta give them credit for shoving one of the biggest scams up our ass, besides the 2020 election fraud. Provides necessary resources for the Treasury Department to address major issues confronting the U.S. economy. Wait a minute. Treasury Department. What is in the Treasury Department? Well, I believe the IRS is part of the Treasury Department. And I believe all the accountants adding up all the money in the government is in there. Okay. And by the way, do you know that the FBI, I know because I was almost going to go into it let's see, 40 some odd years ago. No, I think it's 50 years ago. Yeah. See, to go in the FBI, you either have to have a accounting degree or a law degree. And if you're a law degree guy, they'll put you into criminal scenarios. And if you're an accounting person, they'll put you in what is called white collar. Okay, and then what they do is they take people like me and they go, okay, Mike, find what's missing. They'll put stuff in front of me and I figure it out. And I go, hey, this is this and that is that. I've been doing that for 40 years. And I never realized I had that talent until the very first year I got out of college. Very first year I got out of college. And I was put on these projects. Mike, find out what this is. Mike, find out what that is. Mike, figure this out. Mike, no one told me what to do. They didn't know. It was a new department making industrialized filters. You know, those are the little things they put on the tips of smart bombs so the lasers can guide them to, back then it would have been like Vietnam and stuff. So, actually Vietnam was just ending then. So that's what I was doing, and I realized I could find out stuff just because it's my nature to be able to investigate and find shit. And that's what I was doing in the early years of the 90s when I got involved with the war on the Clintons and their war against America. I did not fight in the war, the Battle of Waco, and I was not blown up at the Battle of Oklahoma City like 168 Americans were. About 30 of them were children, because I guess the Clintons didn't mind blowing up a building that had child care in it, huh? Yeah, first floor. Yeah, they could see the truck pull up that had the bombs in it. Yeah, you know, the big fertilizer bomb? Yeah. Matter of fact, one of the people who survived the blast, her legs did, and they had to cut her legs out from under her because she was trapped in the rock. She saw the truck pull up, and out came two guys. Now, these two guys that came out evidently were like Middle Eastern type, and that's why when the first orders came out, right off the bat, to be on the lookout for two Middle Eastern looking guys. But they didn't see McVeigh come out of the truck, and they didn't see the other guy come out of the truck, because these guys had nothing to do with the bombing. One guy was supposedly put to death because of it. It had to be a secret. They couldn't put anybody on there that really knew what the hell was going on, because Hillary would have gotten in trouble for blowing up 168 people, including 32 children, just so Bill Clinton could get reelected. I'm never going to forget that, Hillary. I know what you did, and it's well documented. It's just that the people that are allowed to speak on the media aren't allowed to say anything. The U.S. economy to rebuild Treasury's institutional capacity. Treasury's an institute. When I go crazy one day, they'll send me into that institution. Funding is requested to support climate initiatives. Really? Well, let's see. Let's say you're in the Treasury Department and you're counting up money. Where do you find climate initiatives? In the bank vault. Is that where they keep climate initiatives? In the bank vault? The expansion of the Treasury Attaché program and cybersecurity and facilities improvements. These investments will enable Treasury to build on recent successes in fostering a robust and equitable economic recovery through implementation of pandemic relief programs created by our friends the Chinese and the Democratic Party, protecting the financial system by addressing risks related to real estate and digital assets. When you say risks related to real estate, are you talking about the billions stolen from Fannie Mae while the Clintons were in office? Or are you talking about the billions that were stolen while the Clintons were in office, but it was hidden until Bush became president? And then Maxine Waters and her core of scum got together and attacked Bush on this stuff all the time. So Bush came up with a plan to fix it so there wouldn't be a problem. But how are we going to get Obama, the first Kenyan, elected to be the president if there's no problem to use as a campaign issue? You know, let's see, 1929, we used the Great Depression to get Democrats in office for 60 some odd straight years. We used the Great Recession, an $800 billion program problem that came from Fannie Mae back when the Clintons were, and they just kept building up and building up. They used that to be able to get Barack Obama elected to power. And since they can't seem to live with us, since they can't seem to support the Constitution or agree to the Constitution, even though they take an oath to the Constitution, get them the hell out of this country. Get out. Get out. Zip, bang, boom. And I have a way. It's called the two-state solution. We're working on that. Of course, we sent it out already to a couple of states I won't mention, to the Republican committee people, and the response was just underwhelming. Which means these people are asleep because they go,
Oh, set the alarm for 2026. We don't have to do shit for 2 years.
yeah, see, that's the difference between Democrats and Republicans. Democrats work every day to steal from us. Republicans don't work every day to protect us from the Democrats. That's the difference. You want to save trillions of dollars? Take all the Democrats and get them out of the country. Line them up. You know, we would be better off if they decided to get rid of 20 million Democrats in the country instead of 20 million illegals. Because the illegals may kill us once in a while, but they sure as hell aren't hurting us amazingly every day like the Democrats do. Okay, so now let's going to show you some proof. The first schedule, it's going to come up on your screen. You'll see Nancy Pelosi, the San Francisco treat. It's coincidental, but I did this schedule. It's going to show up on the screen now, so you won't be seeing me, but you'll see this schedule. And what I did was I broke down the revenue that came in and then the actual spending, creating a surplus or deficit, and whether the government at the time was being led by Democrats in Congress or Republicans, okay? And basically what it does is it shows that there's a $24 trillion deficit.
Wait, Mike. Did you say 24 trillion?
How come it's 35 trillion now? Where did the $10 trillion go? Where did the $10 trillion go? And where did that $10 trillion of debt come from? It wasn't created by Congress.
What's going on? Oh no, Mike, did you just find $10 trillion missing?
Oh, we can explain that. Good. Let's belch you into the electric chair and ask you the questions. So you're going to see this schedule, and basically what it tells you is this. Since Nancy Pelosi got into Congress in 1990, $24 trillion has been overspent by the Congress. Okay, 15 trillion of it was spent by the Democrats. 9 trillion was spent by Republicans. In the time that Republicans are in Congress, they averaged $418 billion over budget. So in other words, on the average, Republicans spent $418 billion every average year over the budget. Is that acceptable? No, it's not acceptable, but it's something that's livable if you can get a hold of it. Now, the Democrats, in the, let's see, how many years were the Democrats? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. In the 14 years that Democrats were in charge of the Congress, they spent an average of $16 trillion over, or about $1.1 trillion a year. Basically, this schedule tells us we can't afford to have a Democrat Congress. And the best way to eliminate a Democrat Congress is, number one, go back to all the Democrat blue states like California and audit all the elections. I think you may have noticed that for some reason, 350,000 more votes came in for Democrats in 6 districts in Orange County in California that are Republican, and Democrats won. Democrats won 6 Republican districts. How'd they do that if Kamala sucked? I'm waiting to hear the result of that. Okay, now we've got 2 other schedules. The first one, it's a schedule, and you can find all these schedules. You can go right in up on the government and type in financial reports. It may be the Treasury Department that you get it from. You would think it was. Outlays by agency, 1962 to 2020. They have all sorts of schedules. Plenty of schedules, yeah. So in 1973, now this is going to be showing your screen now. 1973, Richard Nixon was president of the United States. Now, Nixon had just committed a severe crime. All right. Ronald Reagan had committed the same crime, and the idea from the Democrats was to assassinate him and kill him. But they failed. Okay. And I don't know if you know this, but if you go back through history to see all the 20-year-old white males that are used to kill presidents,
Is that a coincidence?
or do they have some special farm that they put these people to? Yeah, okay. So Nixon they didn't try to kill, but Nixon they decided to try to impeach. Now, the best way to point out the bullshit is to ask questions. And then wait for the Democrats to give you the answer. So here's the question. Richard Nixon, in 1972, was running for re-election. In February of 1972, Richard Nixon was in China. And it was observed that he was in China, and it was historic, and he was working with the Chinese, trying to keep peace, and very presidential, and all the Americans were looking at this. And then in May, he went to the Soviet Union, and he was meeting with the communists and working with them to try to keep peace and no nuclear wars. And so what happened is that most of the Democrats who were viable candidates were like, nah, remember, I'm not running. Why do you think I got to run for U.S. Senate in 1994? Was it because the Democrats were too chicken shit to run against Connie Mack? Connie Mack was strong and powerful. Okay. The only problem was that there was this one guy running in 1994 as a Democrat, and it turned out he was going to actually win the election against Connie Mack. His name was Mike Weil. No relation to me, just was me. Okay. And the reason was because I had saved everybody's gun rights in February 12th, 1994, and I had calculated, based on looking at the 1992 election results, there were like 39 out of 67 counties that had Democrat majorities, because back then there were a lot of Democrats in Florida. And those 39 counties, Bill Clinton didn't win in the presidential race in 92. And they all had majority Democrat registered voters. So I'm saying, gee, Mike, what's the data tell you? The data tells me that for some reason the Democrats in those 39 counties weren't voting for Bill Clinton. Why not? Logic dictates that they were gun owners. And gun owners, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, know that the Democrats are out to steal your guns. Okay? And in the South, Democrats are more conservative than their lunatic Northeastern opponents or compadres. So I says, you know what? If I run for office and I take those 39 counties, I should be able to force a runoff. And then once I get in the runoff, I can win the runoff. I just, I don't have money and large campaign money. So let's get in the second place out of 4 people, which is exactly what happened. I took exactly all those 39 counties. And then Hillary Clinton had to come out of the closet in the White House and make sure that the Jewish people didn't come out to vote for me by defaming me and slurring me with lies and shit, which is, that's what Hillary does. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book about it. Right? Yeah. And you know what? To this day, she hasn't sued me for defamation.
Oh, I must have been telling the truth. Hi, Hillary. You lying bitch.
I can't stand criminals. I'm sorry. I hate criminals. I hate people that steal from the American people. Really do. Really do. So, Nixon He's doing wonderful. Now, you may recall in the recent presidential election, everybody kept saying how, oh, Kamala's going to win. She's going to win. She had $2 billion to spend. But she was a dumbass and everybody knew it. Because all she had to do was open up her mouth and But the polls kept saying that Trump was only ahead by one. And then this week it was her by one, and him, and back and forth. And you could tell that they were full of shit with these polls. Well, in 1972, Richard Nixon was ahead by 19 points. He was ahead of George McGovern by 19 points. That's why nobody wanted to run against Nixon in 1972, because they knew they wouldn't win. They knew Nixon was going to win with a landslide. Everybody knew it. He won 49 states to 1. McGovern took Massachusetts, his home state. 49 other states voted for Nixon. That is a landslide. And that's against the law as far as Democrats are concerned. Why? Because if you win 49 out of 50 states, you must have gotten black vote. Huh? And if you're a Republican and you got black vote, you need to die. Okay? Why? Because every single president really that's been assassinated or attempted to be assassinated all had the same issues. They were good for black people. Lincoln was good for black people, don't you think? JFK, he was really good for black people. And that's why Lyndon Baines Johnson had him killed, plus he wasn't going to go into Vietnam. Okay, Reagan won a landslide. They tried to shoot him 3 months into his presidency. Okay, Trump, everybody knew Trump was good for black people. That's why Biden wasn't getting the black vote. He didn't get the black vote in 2020 either. That's where the 15 million fake ballots came from that everybody now sees. Everybody saw that. So, why would a guy that's pretty intelligent, Nixon was pretty sharp. I mean, and he was in China and Russia. But why? If he's winning an election by 19 points in the polls, it's going to be a landslide. Why would you spend a dime trying to find out what the Democrats are doing? Because the Democrats are losing. That's what they're doing. Democrats are losing. Plain and simple. Okay, Kamala was losing. Plain and simple. But they had to make sure that people thought she was going to win so people would show up to vote. So, Nixon does nothing. Nixon's not really even campaigning. He's being president. Let the people see him on TV as being president. That's all he needs to do, and that's all he needed to do. So why then would Nixon tell some guys who were rejects from the CIA and the Bay of Pigs to break into the Watergate Hotel in May?
May? It was June, Mike. You're wrong. It was June.
No, it was May. There was only one problem. They didn't get caught. See, they were supposed to get caught, and then they could go after Nixon and blame him for the whole thing. Oh, Nixon did it. Nixon did it. Nixon did it.
Oh, yeah, Nixon was in Russia in May. I don't think he made a call.
Yeah, guys. Okay, look. I know we're winning by 19 points, but I'm kind of concerned. Yeah, nobody's ever won by 19 points before. The numbers could be off. We could only be winning by, say, 18, 17 or worse. It's still going to be a landslide. But let's do something really stupid. Send 4 idiots in to get caught, okay? Thank you, bye. Well, they didn't get caught. So what happened? They had to do it again in June. And, of course, this time when they went in, for some reason, the FBI and the Washington Post knew they were going in that day, and they were waiting outside to start the news reports and capture it all. It was a fake. It was a fraud. That's what Democrats do. Democrats create frauds to steal every election possible. Democrats cannot win if they don't steal an election. Okay? Look back. Every election the Democrats have won, they've stolen. Why? Because the Americans don't buy their crap. So Nixon, in his departmental spending, was $210 billion. $210 billion to operate the government. 20 years later, Bill Clinton comes in and he spends $1.2 trillion. That's a 581% increase in government spending over 20 years, or 29% inflation each year, inflating the cost of government. Health and Human Services. The budget for Health and Human Services, when Nixon was president, it was 34% of the Department of Defense budget. In other words, $75 billion for military, $25 billion for Health and Human Services. Okay, so I guess it was okay that you only needed to spend that much money for Health and Human Services. But you know, the Democrats came into power, or actually the Democrats have been in power in the Congress, and they says, you know, it's time to start going one for one. Yeah, for every dollar that the Republicans want to spend on military and defend the nation, we Democrats are going to demand $1 for every dollar in the military to go to Health and Human Services. And we don't really give a shit if they need it or not. We'll use it as a way to siphon money from taxpayers to the government, and then to our donors, and then into our pockets. And that's how we become millionaires with nothing else to do with our brains. Because we haven't worked for a living, but we know how to steal for a living. And all we do is set up the budget and then do that. So what happens? Long story short, Clinton, HHS versus Department of Defense, now is at 91%. In other words, instead of just spending $278 billion on defense, they're spending now $253 billion on Health and Human Services. Okay, we're gonna cut I'm gonna cut this quicker because this stuff is much easier. There's really only some major things to look at. Okay, so now if we go to the second schedule, which I'm going to pop out in front of you now, it shows that the amount of money being spent in the Department of Defense versus HHS as of 2022 with Biden in power was 226%. In other words, remember when we used to be able to spend $700 billion in defense and only spend $700 billion in the Department of Health and Human Services? Now it's 1.6 trillion. 1.4 trillion, 1.5 trillion during the pandemic. Trump, it was 1.1 trillion. Obama, for 7 years, it was $7 trillion, while defense was 4.9 trillion. Okay, so in other words, we weren't putting together a budget for what the needs of the nation were. No, we're not doing that. What we're doing is we're spending money to donate, to get donated from our donors. So what do? Let's see. Here's what we can get away with. And we can get away with it until Kennedy and Trump get together. Then we're screwed. Because then RFK Jr. is going to come in, and he's going to work with Trump, and they're going to steal all the stolen money from us that we've been stealing from the American people through the Food and Drug Administrations and all that other horse shit. You know, the Chinese helped us out in the election. We were able to come up with that phony pandemic so that we could try to talk people into doing mail-in ballots. And then of course, we couldn't get the states that changed the laws as the Constitution requires, because those states had Republican legislatures like Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin. So how are we going to get to have all these fake ballots signed off and approved by no one checking to see the signatures? That was part of the scam. That was part of the scam. One day it'll all come out. I think somebody, years after I've been tossed in the ocean, are going to come out and say,
Wiley was right. He knew it. He picked it out.
of course, you'd make me feel good. And let's get these assholes over the next 4 years and put them in jail where they belong. Stealing is a crime. Whether you take it out of a little baby's pocket or you take it out of my pocket. Before or after the IRS is there. So, $10 trillion has been stolen. Now, I've gone through, and you'll see these schedules, and you can look at them as long as you want to. But basically, I've come up with, now the reason why I'm doing this is because, hey, I was in this business, okay? You know, Vivek's background is coming up with pharmaceutical ideas and buying little companies that aren't really profitable, but he'll try to put them together and maybe make them profitable. And then if he can't make them profitable, which he hadn't been able to do, he'll turn around and sell them to the Japanese for $3 billion. Bingo! That was his success. Bingo! Elon's a different story. Elon's worth gazillions of dollars because Elon's a genius and Elon knows how to do stuff. But Vivek will be able to help him. I think Vivek has, I think he's got the right attitude of what he should be doing. But I still can't sit back and find out 4 years later they didn't know what they were doing or they didn't know what to do right. Okay, I know that Trump wants all this stuff done in 2 years, so I'm helping him out. Okay, I've only been doing finance for 40 years. I go in and find shit to help companies stay in business. It's just what I do. It's just what I do. So I've come up with $3 trillion that can be cut from the federal budget. $3 trillion. Okay. $1 trillion from HHS, Health and Human Services, is being stolen by $1 trillion a year. How do I know? Ask this question. Ready? Mike, when George Bush was president, they had this thing called 9/11. You know, that's where the planes' missile plan that the Clintons and the FBI knew about in 1993, but decided not to do anything about it for some reason. I think it may have been because they were planning on the next war, okay, because, you know, the Democrats are the party of war, and they could always suck a Texas president into going for oil, just like Johnson was going for Vietnam oil.
But there wasn't any oil in Vietnam, sorry. Plenty of drugs.
Drugs and oil, drugs and oil, drugs and oil. Iraq oil, Afghanistan poppies. Iraq oil, Afghanistan poppies. Drugs and oil, drugs and oil. Vietnam didn't have the drugs, but right next door to Thailand, there was a Golden Triangle. They had a whole shopping plaza of drugs to bring over. You know, I don't know if you know this. These assholes were packing up the bodies of dead soldiers and shipping drugs in their caskets back to the United States. I think there was a movie done about the guy that was in charge, came up with that idea. He ended up getting arrested. But they took the bodies of dead Americans and packed in with the bodies the cocaine and the cocaine and the heroin. It was a shame, but you know, you have to understand, why do we have war? We have war so some people can become rich and wealthy. Lyndon Johnson, when he died, he was worth $119 million. He was a worthless piece of shit before that, but he made all this money thanks to war. Thanks to war. So, when we look at, remember how we say, I find stuff by asking questions? Ask a question and see what makes sense. So let's look at this. So in 2001, the Department of Defense was spending $290 billion. And then later on in the year, we had a thing called 9/11. And we decided to go to war. And by 2008, we were spending $594 billion on military instead of $290. We basically doubled the amount of spending in the military for war. 7 years of war just to that date. But what's interesting is, so in 8 years for Bush, he increased X amount of spending versus 2001. You could calculate that September 11th cost us $1.2 trillion in increased defense spending. The question is this: why did Department of Health and Human Services go up 1.1 trillion at the same time? I don't recall 9/11 being attacking a hospital or a medical facility. Huh? Why did HHS, Health and Human Services, have to spend an extra $1.1 trillion a year over those 7 years as they spent $1.2 trillion for defense? Why? What was it? What caused the increase in the HHS budget? Well, here's how it goes. We saw them Democrats, Republicans wanted to spend money in Congress, and they wanted to buy military equipment because they were going to go to war against Iraq and Afghanistan, whatever. So we said, okay. So we know that you're getting campaign kickbacks and you're getting campaign donations from all the military people. Well, we need to have the same money. So if we're going to give you $1 trillion to spend on war, we want $1 trillion to spend on ourselves so we can have mansions. Like Barack's got 4 mansions, Biden's got like 6 homes. We want to become wealthy, rich too. Okay? So here's the deal. You want us to pass your defense budget? Okay, you got to give us money. You got to pay to play. All the American people can afford the extra $1 trillion? Sure. Just because Health and Human Services is going to go from $25 billion in 1973 to $1.8 trillion in 2025, and there's $1 trillion of savings. The $1 trillion that the Democrats steal from us every year in HHS can come out of that budget. And that's what I'm expecting JFK to do. He's going to save $1 trillion. Then we got the Department of Treasury. It's $1.3 trillion. We don't need the Department of Treasury. Get rid of it. Have you ever heard of banks? Banks, yeah. Let me give you a little idea I came up with for getting rid of the IRS, okay? Now, by the way, the IRS is filled with accountants. And the FBI is filled with accountants. Do we really need all those accountants? No. And do we need accountants who keep sending us memos saying, we're still working on your tax return, Mike. Give us 60 days. Give us 60 days. Give us 60 days. These people can't get anything done. Why? Are they stupid? Or did the assholes in Congress that failed being lawyers but still have a law degree came up with all these tax codes and laws and shit? It's an abomination. The 16th Amendment should go away. Our founding fathers knew that this would probably happen. They could use it in a plan to steal money from the American people, and that's what they do. So long story short, we should be able to cut 3. I'm expecting Vivek and Elon to be able to trim $3 trillion from the federal budget. And what that does is we have departmental spending of 5.7. Now, this is not, I took out Social Security. Social Security is not in these numbers. The money that goes against Social Security is not in these numbers. Okay. 5.7 trillion for 2025. If you take out 3 trillion, okay, you're down to 2.7 trillion. And if I recollect from what I've seen, the revenues have been about $4 trillion in taxes. But if the government only needs to take in 2.7, now granted, it's got 30 trillion and 35 trillion in debt to pay off, but we don't actually owe that money. That money's owed by the Democrats who stole it. Okay? And so we're going to work out a deal where they're going to give up property and stuff. Otherwise, they're going to sit in an electric chair for financial fraud. You know, the days are done putting up with this shit. Okay, I've been putting up with it for 30 years. I've been opening up my mouth, bitching and complaining because I see shit, I know shit, I find shit, and we're in deep shit. Now, hopefully, with the help of God, Mr. Trump will survive the next 4 years, and we'll be on our way to a 12-year Republican resolution like we had after Woodrow Wilson. Woodrow Wilson in 1913 came in, and he created the Federal Reserve and the IRS and this and that and all this other horse shit and taxed the shit out of us. Okay? And then when the Democrats decided they need to get the blacks out of the Republican Party and into their party, they decided to come up with a Great Depression, aided by the Federal Reserve, which has acknowledged that they did that. And they apologize for making interest rates for 6% when inflation was 0. They caused a great contraction of money and made a lot of people poor, especially the black people. And then the black people who no longer had their businesses because they all went away decided, okay, the Democrats are trying to buy us, so we'll support the Democrats. And for 90 years, we'll be Democrats, and then one day we're going to finally wake up and we're going to go, fuck that shit. Okay. We know where the $10 trillion is. It's in the federal budget. We know that the $10 trillion can come out, okay, but it can't come out all in 1 year. But you can come out $3 trillion a year. All right, now, for $3 trillion a year, you'll be able to get back the $10 trillion in a little over 3 years, and then the rest has to go against the accumulated debt that isn't paid off by the sale of properties owned by Democrats who have committed financial crimes against the American people.
Right, Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Barack Obama.
Yeah. By the way, since we're talking about Pete Hegseth, hey Pete, did you go to school and get a law degree?
No, he didn't.
Oh. So then you didn't lose your law license like Barack and Michelle. Why did Barack and Michelle have to turn their law licenses in to the state of Illinois? Because they did something that was illegal. And the state said, we'll forgive you. Just turn in your law license. What were those two criminals up to? Huh? Maybe someday the media will tell us. And if you think the media is going to start telling the truth, hold your breath and stick your thumb up your ass. Because that's what they're going to tell you to do, to take a hike. Take a hike. Get on the road. Okay. So we know where the 10 trillion's gone. We know who stole the 10 trillion. We know how they stole the 10 trillion. Right in front of our eyes. Right in front of the media. Oh, really? Well, I hope Vivek and Elon find it. Well, they can because they're getting a copy of this memo. They're getting a copy of this schedule. They're getting a copy of this video. Okay? I've already offered them. You want my help? Send the schedule over to me. Send to me what you're looking at. Let me take a look at it. I already told them. Where you start cutting everything, make a list of all the properties. Okay? Let's look at it this way. The government's got, let's say, 1,000 buildings. Okay? And the 1,000 buildings are worth $2 trillion. Okay? But we only need like half those buildings, so we could sell the others, and there's $1 trillion. We could go ahead and not pay down the debt with it, but we can take that $1 trillion and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to reinvest and build our cities up. Here's $1 trillion right there. $1 trillion is a lot of money. Okay? Turn assets into investment, not into paying off debt. Paying off debt comes over time. Okay? And the other thing you can do is refinance. Refinance $35 trillion with 2% Trump bonds. Trump bonds. MAGA bonds. There you go. Buy MAGA bonds to fight the MAGA bonds. I'm a genius. Let me write that down there, okay? Buy MAGA bonds to fight the vagabonds. Let me write that down because I'll forget. You know, I'm at that age now. Vagabonds. MAGA bonds. Nobody else will come up with this idea because this video hasn't printed yet, and I'm going to do this as soon as I'm done with this show. Okay? Refinance the federal debt to 2%. 2%.
That's going to be tough to do, Mike.
Bullshit! We're Americans. We can get this stuff done. All right, so look, I hope you got a gist of what it is going on. Let me see. It looks like we've been... Oh, I've been only talking for an hour. God, I can't shut up. But that's okay. I enjoy this stuff. I mean, I get paid millions of dollars each millennia, and my first payment comes out in about 2,000 years. I won't be around to collect it, but at least I'm going to earn it or something like that. I'm just kidding. Look, I love you. I love America. This is my country. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I'm a bitch when it comes to criminals and people attacking my country and stealing from the people. I don't put up with that shit. We didn't put up with it in 1776. We sure as hell am not putting up with it now. But we got to get going, and I'm going to be on people's ass. And you know, I already started a third political party. I already had the name and everything. Okay, and then I started feeling better about the Republicans working with Trump because I was pissed that they did not support him in 2020. If I was able to find the election fraud, why couldn't everybody else? Well, everybody else could. They just weren't saying shit about it because
Trump is evil, remember. Trump is evil. And I am Trump, so I must be evil too.
love you.